Okay, there we go. We are live. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Good to have you here. So we are live on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I always have to look at the corner to see where it is, and it only has the icons. I have to remember what it's actually called. But yes, we are live in all the places. I'm just going to get them up so then I can see if any comments come through as well. So this is You Are the Asset. This is the newsletter that goes out on LinkedIn on Fridays, right? And then I have a Q&A the next day. Okay, so this is the Q&A. All right, that for any questions that you have, you can come in and say them live here in the comments of this video or on the newsletter itself. You can, if you're not going to be here live, but these do happen live every Saturday morning, my time, 10:30 a.m. AST, also New York time at the moment, and I believe that's 3:30 in the UK. And yes, so we will be going live. You can always put your questions in the comments of any newsletter, right? And I will always answer them on the next Q&A. So I will see them and I will be able to answer them for you. Okay, so this week, or well, it's actually been the last 2 weeks. So last week is when we started the Q&As, but the week before was when I started the newsletter. So I had a little bit of a the first Q&A was on the first newsletter, right? The 4 things that you need to be financially successful or financially certain, I think I called it, right? So learning to dream, learning to believe, learning to plan, and then learning to act. Okay, so you can go ahead and if you want to, if that's interesting to you, please do see the newsletter for that, and also the Q&A. Okay, so I have now got this up on Facebook, so I can see that if any comments come through on. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we've got that there. And I'm just going to also bring up YouTube so I can see it there as well. You can see that I was really prepared for this morning. I actually went to do some grocery shopping this morning and I just came in. But we're all good. We're all good. Okay. So yeah, so this week's newsletter and last week's newsletter was really about creating security for ourselves, right? Yes, financial security, but there are other types of security because, sometimes, people do have money, but they still don't feel secure, right? So let's say, we're talking about a job. I work in the visual effects studios, in the visual effects industry. And, a lot of people in this industry, we don't feel secure, right? It's not an industry. And if you're in the visual effects industry, if you're, a lot of my connections on LinkedIn are in the visual effects industry, the film industry, TV industry. And it's just, and it's not just because of AI, right? It's not because of AI. It's always kind of been like this. And it's not the visual effects studios themselves. It's just that it's the wider context of visual effects. But, we are actually seeing this all over. Like it's actually bigger than visual effects, having that security, because, what we were taught in school and what we grew up with and what society teaches us is that, job security, right? And I mean, let's just take the financial aspect for starters. And we don't see long contracts in visual effects in film, like, because they're done on projects, right? And that's just the industry, and that is the business model that a lot of studios have, right? You get a project in, you hire the crew for that, right? So, and when you're the worker, right, the employee, or freelancer, whatever you want to call it, essentially you have a contract, and it's going to be, there's going to be an end to it. It's not a permanent contract. And even when you do get a permanent contract, we're seeing visual effects studios shutting down, unfortunately. And, you know, when we're seeing that all over the place, and you think, okay, well, even if I have a permanent job, if this closes down, no one's got a job, right? It doesn't matter how senior you are, it doesn't matter how good you are, the company doesn't exist anymore, right? This happened to me actually at Prime Focus back in 2014, right? Just a year before that, you know, Rhythm and Hughes, we watched, you know, Life of Pi win the Oscar. Rhythm and Hughes won the Oscar for that. At the same time, they filed for bankruptcy, right? So, you know, this isn't a new thing in the visual effects industry, but, you know, these contracts, and it doesn't, it's almost like our skill set doesn't even create security, right? So, you know, once we get a contract, it's like, oh, we can breathe again. And then it gets to this place where, well, for how long, right? And can it be taken away tomorrow? Because we saw that at various companies where, you know, you get the contract and you think it's going to be 9 months, and a month in, for whatever reason, the project's put on hold and they have to let you go, right? How are they going to pay you if the project's gone on hold? And, you know, this, you know, I haven't run a visual effects company before, so I'm not going to, you know, say, oh, they could have done this, they could have done that. And I think a lot of people do. And I think there's a lot more intricacies. I don't think anyone means to build a company and hire people and just let them go, right? I genuinely don't believe that that's, you know, their intention is to like mess everyone around, but that is what happens. So yeah, you know, if a project finishes early, right, there are layoffs. If there's, you know, funding shifts. And so that's even just the contracts ending, and having security within, you know, making sure that money's coming in on a regular basis. Okay. So a lot of visual effects people in the visual effects industry, I won't say visual effects artists, because you know, it goes beyond the artist, right? You have the support staff, you have production, you have the IT guys, you have the technicians, you know, the crewing team. Like, you have all these people. It's not just the artists, because it affects everyone in the industry. But so it goes beyond the contracts as well, because when you have a contract, and or a job, right, even if it's a permanent contract, okay, it's still a contract, right, and it can end at any time. And you know, when you're dependent on that, you feel a little bit at the mercy of those people, right? The person the company who has given you that contract. You know, can you say no to working overtime? You know, that kind of security that, you know, you're not going to be judged. You know, it's not going to affect your next contract. It's not going to affect them extending your contract. Right? That kind of security, feeling safe. You know, we talk about a lot of security in the visual effects industry in terms of, you know, information not being shared. There's so much security for the client, right? We need to put this in place, that in place. Every door has a key fob, and you got to make sure you use your key fob, and, you know, you can't hold the door open for someone else. So much security. You know, the internet isn't connected. It has to go through a specific way, and all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of that. And I think, you know, security for us, for the people who work in the industry and who are, you know, making this all happen, to me, financial security, that there is financial security, but it also comes down to the security we have within ourselves. Because like I said, people can have financial security, but then they don't have these things internally that make them feel secure. Okay, they have the money, but they still don't feel like the person that they can be. And I think it's so important to build that up at the same time, which is why, you know, as a personal development coach, as a life coach, you know, I help people create those income streams that make them, you know, feel financially secure, but at the same time feeling like it's not just like, oh, just do this one thing. This is the one thing that's going to help you, like, change your life. It's not about that. The one thing that's going to change your life is you. Okay, when you're more confident, right, when you can communicate more clearly, when you can manage your time with authority, right? These things really matter. And how you build yourself up as you're building that income stream not only helps your financial security, right, outside of the industry, but actually helps you inside the industry as well, right? A lot of people in the visual effects industry, they don't want to leave. They're almost forced to leave, right? They like the work that they do and they want to continue doing that work. But when the finances aren't there, when they're treated the way they are, and they feel so out of control of their lives, they need to take a step back and find something else. And this is I think the biggest difference between the visual effects industry and just people generally in a 9-to-5. I think people generally in a 9-to-5 want to find that financial security and internal security outside of a 9-to-5, whereas in the visual effects industry, they want to stay in the visual effects industry. They want to do what they do, and they want to love it, and they want to be part of that creativity and those worlds and all the imagination that kind of goes into creating films and creating all the TV shows and stuff that everyone gets engrossed in and enjoys. They want to be part of that. But when it comes to your own just life, because the thing is, when people talk about work-life balance, and I don't believe in work-life balance, I believe in work-life alignment, or just life alignment in general, right? So when you're not having to spin loads of plates, but actually it's just one plate because it's just you, right? And it's not that, if you're stressed out in your work for whatever reason, it's going to come home. And if you're stressed out at home, it's going to come into your work. Like you don't compartmentalize, right? You're a human being, and that should be appreciated. And I think it is going to be more and more appreciated, especially now that we're entering into this age of AI, where tasks are going to be done by AI. All the boring stuff is going to be taken on by AI, and we're going to have more ability to be creative, more ability to connect, right? The human element is going to be important now, and I think even more than ever, it's really important to build up who you are rather than just like the buttons that you can push, right? Because you're going to be able to get AI to do that stuff where you can like bring in more creativity to your work. So that was the newsletter that I wrote 2 weeks ago. Okay. 1 week ago, really. So not yesterday. Yesterday was another newsletter. But this was the newsletter that I wrote last Friday. Okay. So when you're looking to create that kind of security, don't look for it in a job or in a contract. Okay, that's good to just kind of have a safety net. I'm not saying don't have a job. I'm not saying that. I'm saying appreciate the job that you have, the contract that you have, whatever it is. But don't rely on it for your security, for safety. And so then yesterday, I released another edition of You Are the Asset. And this really was connected to that idea of like, okay, you need to build up something of your own. Okay. And as I say, the way that I kind of came about this for myself was through personal development. I didn't initially kind of think, oh, well, I'm gonna make loads of money now. I'm gonna create income streams and all this kind of stuff. No, I didn't do that. I thought about who I wanted to become, right? And I think this is really crucial, actually, because I think sometimes people think, they question, who am I? And this is actually, it wasn't exactly the question that I came up with, but it was like, what's the point of being here was my question. But I think a lot of people think, who am I? Like trying to discover themselves. And, I say, instead of trying to discover yourself, asking who am I, asking who can I become, right? Because then you're not finding yourself, you're creating yourself. Okay. And that's what I believe in. I believe in creating yourself, creating the person that you can become. But, whoever that is, a lot of the time I hear people say, oh, that's just not me. Well, could it be? What, how would your life change if you were that person? And I know from myself that I have changed so much. There's absolutely no way I would come on to the internet and do a live session and talk at all. You know, even 5 years ago. It's not who I was, but it is who I am now, right? And because I know for me, it's more important for me to share these things and to help the industry than it is for me to think like, oh, I don't want to be that person. Oh, that's not who I am. Like, oh no, you know, whatever. You know, I guess I realized that I was making it about me. It's not about me. So I think when we think about ourselves, yes, we shy away. But if we think about other people, we can very much show up as the kind of person that we can become. So yeah, so definitely, you know, and this is where the whole concept of you are the asset comes from. So then yesterday, yeah, so the newsletter that let me just check if any questions and things are coming through. How is AI shaping the visual effects industry? Vakil Manzoor. Hi, Vakil. Thank you for joining. How is AI shaping the visual effects industry? Okay, so I mean, this is a very big question. And the first question actually I would ask is, what do you how do you think that the AI is shaping the visual effects industry? So let me know, Vakil, if you're still here listening. I know you wrote this a few minutes ago, but if you know, how do you think AI is shaping the visual effects industry? Let me know. I'll come back to this, but yes, thank you for joining. And yeah, anyone else, but by the way, this is a Q&A session, so if you have questions specifically on the topic of security, and this, you know, question that Vakil has asked, you know, how is AI shaping the industry, it is very important, because, you know, I think a lot of people don't feel secure in the industry, thinking AI is coming along. I did touch on it a little bit in what I spoke about, in terms of, I think AI is going to be taking, because, you know, the thing is, in visual effects, you know, I think sometimes we say that we're working in this creative industry, and there is some creativity, but, you know, I'm a compositor, by the way. So, and sometimes what happens is, you know, you get so into the project, and, you know, there's so many of you in there, it can feel like a cog in a machine, right? And that's how I felt, if I'm honest. It was, how long ago? Maybe, yeah, 5-6 years ago. That's kind of what I started to feel. I didn't realize that's what it was, by the way. I thought, you know, I'm just in a, well, I did know that I felt like a cog in a machine, but I thought I just needed to go into a smaller team, because I was at Framestore, and I left Framestore to work in a smaller team, to, you know, not feel so much like a cog in a machine, and which is a shame that I left, actually, because the last project that I worked on at Framestore, which was a Bond movie, I can't remember the exact the exact name of the Bond film, but whatever it was that during 2020 was being worked on. I'm not gonna even try to name it, because I'll probably name one from like the 60s or something. But, you know, that was actually, I actually did get to, you know, do some creativity on that, because there was like trace of gunfire, and I got to, like, you know, create the look for that and stuff. So that was really, really cool, and I had a lot of fun doing that. But I think AI is going to be taking over the button pushing of our jobs, right? I think it's going to take over a lot of the, like, admin things, all those things. Obviously, there's going to be someone who has to implement that, right? But I think it's going to give us more ability to be more creative, because at the moment, you know, we have the director who has the vision and explains that vision to the VFX soup, and then the VFX soup, like, gets us to do it. And, you know, we go into reviews and they say, oh, can you split the difference between you know, the green and the blue, or you know, whatever. And so that, and then we go and we do that, and we send it back in, and, you know, that kind of stuff I think AI can do, right? I think the creativity is that person saying, like, this doesn't look like, let's make it look like this. And I think it's going to allow for more of that creativity, you know, those human aspects that are actually brought in, because I'll be honest, there are a lot of activities within visual effects that are button pushing, if I'm honest. And I think AI is going to take those over, and I think it's going to create more opportunities for creativity, which is the human aspect. Okay, so Vakil, in terms of AI shaping the visual effects industry, let's have a little question mark here. Why does it have a question mark? Okay, I think it's going to do. Obviously, we're going through a shift at the moment, right? And I know it's scary for everyone. And I think regardless of how AI is going to shape the industry, the bigger question is, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because that's what matters. AI is going to come. AI is here. AI is going to grow, right? And regardless of what it does, you're the one who's in control of your life. You're the one who's going to have to make the changes, right? Regardless of what happens. So it doesn't matter what AI is going to do. AI is going to do what AI is going to do, right? The visual effects industry is going to do what the visual effects industry is going to do. And our responsibility is to say, what do we want in our life? And then putting a plan in to actually go and achieve that. Okay. So if you want security in your life, you've got to think about, okay, well, I don't actually know what's going to happen with AI. I know that it's here. We could have another COVID situation tomorrow, right? You don't know. Nothing's certain. The only thing that you can make certain is saying that, like, I'm going to build myself up to be this person, right? You can work on your confidence, your communication, your time management. These three things are three things that doesn't matter what you do, they're going to help you in your life, okay? Regardless of what AI is going to do. So I think a lot of big studios are, having AI departments. And I think a lot of smaller studios are a little scared of having a department because they might be judged for going down that route. I've also heard VFX clients saying, like, oh, I don't mind if you use AI, just don't tell us about it. So it's almost like, you know how visual effects has been the kind of thing that no one wants to talk about. When they go, when actors, directors go into interviews, they say, oh yeah, no VFX was used. And we know that it was, because it's like, well, we worked on it and it's in the credits. But they say, oh no, it was all like on set. It was all on set. I remember in The Martian, one of the actresses, she said, that wasn't visual effects. Like, they were actually throwing stuff up at us. And they probably were to get their reaction or whatever, but like, we still added stuff in, like we still, and we'd removed stuff, probably like removed all the stuff that they were throwing and just made it, exactly how they wanted it to be, all the particles to be moving, etc. Maybe she didn't even know. Maybe she was just like, yes, that's exactly how it was. And that's how good it was. And that's the funny thing, right? With visual effects, you know that you've done a good job when no one knows the visual effects are even there, right? That's the job of a visual effects artist, to be invisible. And it has backfired. So, I think AI is going to be a similar thing. Hopefully they'll start saying, like, oh yes, we use real visual effects, we didn't use AI. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they're still going to say, like, oh no, we really wanted to make sure it was all on set. We wanted to make sure it was all done in real life. And yet they're still going to be using visual effects, which is now going to be overlaid with AI. Yeah, and I think personally, I think it's going to be a good thing. I think it's going to enhance what we do as visual effects artists, so that we can bring more creativity, we can do more, and do it better as well. All right. Okay. So, hey, Paul, good to see you here. AI should bring positive things to the industry, but it's definitely a bit frightening. 100%. Totally agree with you, Paul. Yes, everyone is scared of it, but I think the best way to not be scared of it is to say, okay, well, let me do what it is that, is going to be right for me, regardless of what AI is going to do for the industry and to the world as well, right? Because remember, we don't just live in a visual effects bubble. We live in the whole wide world. Okay, so yes, I never went on to the newsletter that we had out yesterday. So no time, no skill, not business minded means it can't work for me, right? So I put equals fail. It's wrong, right? Now, one thing I hear, and this is kind of like a little bit of a list of things that, people have said to me in the visual effects industry specifically about why they can't create their own security. Okay, why they can't create their own financial security, emotional security, right? Because when I talk about creating financial security, financial freedom, it's very much on a journey of self-development, of personal development, and building that up along the way. Because no money is going to do that for you, but you can do it at the same time, right? So a lot of people say that, like, oh, you're not going to be happy, money doesn't make you happy. Well, but money doesn't make you, like, being poor doesn't make you happy either, right? And this is the thing, usually when people say money doesn't make you happy, it insinuates that being poor makes you happy, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, if that's not going to make me happy, I might as well just go be poor. Well, I've been poor, and I can tell you it doesn't make you happy either. So, and I believe that you don't have to choose between being happy or having money. I don't think money makes you miserable, right? It depends on how you make the money and who you become in that process as well, right? So how am I making the money and who am I becoming? Okay, so let's talk about a few things that people say in terms of what they what the reasons. And the biggest one I hear is that I don't have time, right? And this is probably the most common one that I hear, especially from visual effects people in visual effects in general, but visual effects artists. There's so much overtime, tight deadlines, pressure, and it's almost like if you stop moving, you're going to be falling behind. Okay. You're already stretched so thin, and then you come home and you just want to have, some time to relax. And the thing is, I think this idea of not having time traps us. And the truth is, it's not about working more. It's about stopping trading time for money. Okay. So, if you haven't seen the masterclass that I put on, please do register and come along to the masterclass, because, I talk about this idea of, having, there's just a different concept, right? We call it passive income in general. It's not a phrase that, I always resonate with, but just, for the sake of calling it something, right? Opposed to active income, right? So you're exchanging time for money. And there are streams of incomes that you can do where you don't have to, exchange your time, your energy, or your joy, right? You can, you can make money without having to exchange your time. Not in the beginning, right? But again, it just comes down to your priorities. What are you going to prioritize? Because if you don't prioritize it, if you don't make time for it now, later on, it's, you're going to be, it's almost like, you want to go home, you want to relax. And it's like, okay, cool. If you were doing something that you knew was going to give you this more time, more energy, more joy, that actually energizes you, right? And I know this is a difficult concept, because I think a lot of people, when they think about work, they think about it as draining. But the way I set things up, I just didn't feel drained by it, right? And it's difficult to explain because when I just say what I did, people are like, that sounds like a lot of work, but it really came down to the feeling. Have you ever been in, when you're in your flow state and time just goes, and you just get like so much done because you're just like enjoying what you're doing, right? And it becomes like that. So I would definitely say, think about how you want to use your time, because, people who make a lot of money, they don't have more hours in the day, right? They're just using it in a different way. Okay. And that's kind of what I want to help people in the visual effects industry do. Okay, so the next one is I don't have the skills, right? So this is a common misconception, because they think that, you need to retrain. You don't need to retrain, right? You actually have a lot of the skills, especially as visual effects artists, right? People who work in visual effects have problem-solving skills, right? They have the ability to think differently. And I realized this when I became really good at this marketing software, right? That had all these like automations and workflows and stuff like that. And I realized that I got really into it. And it was because I was a compositor, right? It was because I knew how things work. I had no idea that I was good at that. And this is the thing. There's internal things, I guess attitude is a skill, right? The way you approach problems, the way you show up, right? The way, when there's pressure, how do you act? And these things, by the way, are also actually really good in the industry as well. So when you are like building that up in your job, and you build that up, with your income stream as well, it actually helps both things. Okay. But you don't need to retrain. Okay. Building, other income streams, or, building income streams, for that kind of financial security is not about learning other skills. It's about understanding who you are, right? And who other people are, and understanding how to offer value, right, to those people. Okay. Again, I explained that in the masterclass. If you're on LinkedIn and you go to my profile, you'll see a link to the masterclass that I'm going on about. But I will put it in the I can put it in here as well in the comments at the end. Okay, another one is I'm not business minded. I am aware that we are a little bit over time, so I'll quickly go through this. So yeah, not being business minded. And I think this belief comes from seeing other people who have businesses and seeing how they operate. And that's actually, it's just, well, it's not really about spreadsheets and, profit margins and all this kind of stuff. Being business minded is just understanding, how to solve problems for other people, right? And that's basically what VFX people do all day long. So and I say this because, I am a visual effects artist, and I don't really see myself as a business person at all. In that concept, right, of a business person. But I actually really enjoy business. I actually feel it's really creative when you think about it in a creative way. If you think about it in a creative way, it's actually very, very fun. So I think and it's just, I have so many ideas all the time. And it creates so much possibility, right? Every time, I see someone or I speak to someone and they tell me about something that's, holding them back, but whatever it is, I think, oh, this could be really good for that person. Like there's a thing, and and the thing is, I don't have enough time. I just said that before. You do have time. It's just about priorities, and it is actually. This does come back to the point about not having time. I don't have time to do all the ideas that I think about. But so I always have to focus on. I focus on one. Right, and I go from there. But and that's what I mean. It comes down to priorities. It's not about time, right? We have 24 hours in the day. We all have 24 hours in the day. We're going to sleep for 8 hours. We're going to work for 8 hours. Well, 5 days a week, let's say. And then we've got the rest of the time. And actually, when you block that out and you have a look at how much time you actually have outside of sleep and outside of your work, you do actually have quite a bit of time. I know some people say that, you know, that they like cooking and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, I've got to eat and, you know, or shower. I do shower and I do eat, by the way. But it's just about blocking that in and really looking at, you know, how much time I actually have. Anyway, I've gone back to time and I was on being business minded. But yeah, I think, you know, the perfectionism thing that we have, being pixel perfect with things, is actually a real asset in business, especially when it comes down to the data and seeing these patterns and things like that. But yeah, I think being business minded is a belief that we have that it's something that it's actually not. And actually, we should put that away and just create our own version of what being business minded is, which is finding out how you can solve a problem and offering value to people. Okay. All right, cool. And then, you know, just thinking, you know, you have an idea and you just think, oh, that's not going to work. And this is like an instinct that keeps us stuck. Okay. Like, it's not going to work, so I'm not even going to bother. And instead of asking, will this work? If you can ask yourself, how can I make this work? It changes everything. Right? Because when we think that something's not going to work, yeah, we just don't take any action. And thought, well, we're never even going to know. But we've already told ourselves it's not going to work. And it's because the brain is trying to keep us safe, right? But ultimately, it's not safe, right? It's not security long term. It's security in the moment, but it's not security long term. So asking yourself, okay, I don't think this is going to work, but how can I make this work, right? I'll give you a very simple and quick example of my running, for example, right? So I live on a ridge. So there's a hill to get to where I am, and then it goes flat for a little bit and then goes up again. And so when I started running, I would run out and I would go down the hill and blah, 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 I'd run wherever and come back up the hill, right? So it was a hill. Whether I go down the hill or I go up the hill, there's a hill, right? Wherever I'm going, there's a hill. And then I started training for the marathon. And I needed flat, right? And I was like, oh God, but I have to get this, like, do this stupid hill and like what I'm going to do. And then I thought, okay, well, I could just run around like the block here, but it's like a third of a kilometer. So that's what I could do. What else could I do? Because the thing is, I was putting it off because I didn't want to do the hill, right? I didn't want to do the hill and I was putting it off. So, okay, how can I make this work? Now that I know the reason that I'm not doing it, how can I make it work? Okay, the block was an option. It's like, yeah, but like how much can I run around this block? You know, if I need to do like 5K, 6K is like a minimum run. And I think I did like maybe 3K around it. And I was like, I can't just keep running around this little block. So anyway, but I didn't think like, oh, I'm not going to do it. I was like, okay, well, what can I do? How can I make this work? So, you know, now I actually just drive down to the bottom of the hill. Very simple. I drive down to the bottom of the hill and then I go running. So, you know, there's and it sounds so simple now. But, you know, when your mind is just telling you don't do it, right? Then, you know, we don't know why it's telling us that. So the first thing is to really understand what's holding us back. But once we understand that, and then we can kind of say, okay, well, how can I make this work? Right? We don't want to just be like, oh, well, you know, this is I know what's holding me back. It's that hill. We want to go one step further and say, okay, well, how can I make this work? Okay. And, you know, if then, you know, the answer comes up like, well, now I'm just going round and round. I can't make, you know, this doesn't work. Okay. How can I make it work? How can I make it work? Okay. So the next one is, what if I fail? Okay. And this is a big one, whether you're conscious of it or not. We all fear this. We all fear failure. Okay. The best way I overcome this is by saying, okay, what exactly am I afraid of? I'm afraid that this will happen. Okay, great. So if that happens, what am I going to do? Right. So it kind of ties into that previous one. I think it's not going to work. Right. Okay. So cool. If it doesn't work, what am I going to do? Let me think through it. Right. Instead of overthinking, we're thinking through. Right. So we say, okay, that happens. What we're going to do? Okay, well, I could do this or I could do that. Okay. So then you're not stuck. So we have a plan if it goes down that route. Okay, cool. right? So that's very it's actually very simple. When we have these things that are holding us back and we know how to overcome them, then there's no reason to be stuck. So another one is people are just kind of waiting for the industry to bounce back, right? And I think that's a dangerous assumption because, like I said earlier, Life of Pi won the Oscar at the same time Rhythm and Hughes, who did the visual effects for Life of Pi, winning the Oscar, went bankrupt at the same time, right? That was in 2013. We're now in 2025. Had to think about that. That's 12 years. Not much has changed, right? And it's not that Rhythm and Hughes didn't care. They cared so much that they went into bankruptcy to get this, to create this film. The studios care so much. And I think sometimes that they're probably maybe at their own detriment. I don't know. Like I say, I haven't created a visual effects studio. I don't know all the ins and outs of how it goes. But waiting for the industry to bounce back when we're not part of that, like just waiting is just not an option. It's not a strategy. Okay. So whatever it is that, to feel secure is building yourself up as the asset. Okay. And looking at your life. And the first step that, I take my clients through is life design, actually. Right. Yes, of course, I help them with income streams, but the very first thing that we do is life design. And we say, okay, what do you want in this area? Right. So there are 12 areas of life. What do you want? What do you believe? Or what do you need to believe in order to be that person? Right. Because it's not just about what you want, the car, the house, where you want to live. It's not just about that. Because all those things have just come down to the experience that you want to have and the feeling you want to have from that experience, right? Because I know sometimes people say, oh, I don't care about stuff. I just like experiences. Well, cool. But still, it just comes down to a feeling. Because you might have an experience, right? And say, oh, I like to travel. And it's like, okay, you might go traveling and have a very bad experience, right? It comes down to the feeling that you want. And so when I help them build out their blueprint, it's about saying, okay, well, in your health and fitness, how do you want to feel, right? In your relationships, how do you want to feel? In your finances, how do you want to feel? In your business, in the work that you do, how do you want to feel? Right? That's what you want. That's your vision. Okay. And then what are the beliefs that you need to be there? Because if you believe that rich people are greedy, wealthy people are greedy, business people are greedy. I'm just going to stick with that one. It's going to hold you back because you're not a greedy person. You don't want to be a greedy person. So, the belief doesn't match the vision, right? So we want to make sure that, our beliefs are in alignment with our vision for all these areas of life. And then also considering our motivation. Well, why do we want it? Why do we want those feelings, right? What's it going to create for us, for our family, for the world, right? And also what are we trying to avoid as well, right? That's also part of motivation. Right, so I talk about a pull motivation, which is something we want to go towards, and a push motivation, something we want to avoid. Okay, and sometimes we haven't experienced the thing that we want to avoid, right? But we do kind of fear it in the future. It's like, okay, well, if we don't do something about this, if you're Vakil, if you're thinking about AI, and if it's scaring you, if AI is scaring you, it's like, okay, well, let me think about that. Like, okay, a big motivation for maybe, your financial life, that area of your life is like, well, I don't want to be stuck when AI comes along. That could also be part of, your intelligence area of life, thinking I don't want to be stuck when AI comes along. That's a motivation. So, okay, cool. So then what's your vision for that? Are you someone who understands AI? Are you someone who can talk about AI without fear? Right? Are you someone who's shaping AI in the industry? So you can start to think about the possibilities, the potential that you have, because I promise you, whoever you are watching, right? Bakil, Paul here, anyone else, like you have immense potential. Like you have more potential than you can ever discover in a lifetime. So you might as well go for it, because I think you'll find that you're very surprised. I've already surprised myself again and again and again. And I've only really been doing this for like the last 5 years. It's an amazing journey, and I encourage you all to start that journey. And a great place to start is the masterclass. I'd love for you to come along, sign up to the masterclass. I'll put the link in the comments of all the different places that I'm on, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. So this is a Q&A for You Are the Asset, which is the newsletter that comes out on Fridays. So every Friday, the newsletter will come out, and then every Saturday at 10:30 AST, I will be going live and answering any questions and also going over the topic as well. Okay, so have a great rest of your day, and I shall see you next week. Bye for now, guys.